Hi, AP Psych. This will be image review, I believe, number 8, and let's get going. Okay, a few things in this one before I stop and let you pause and look at it. I'm seeing that's going to be neurotransmitters, that's going to be neuron stuff, and we've got a drug in there. Okay, clearly this is going to be cocaine as it is labeled cocaine, and a few things about neurons or neurotransmitters that we should be able to see right off the bat here. If this is going to be the sending neuron, this goes that way and then goes to the other one. You could also call it a presynaptic neuron, and the other one, the second one, the receiver for it would be a postsynaptic neuron. And then we've got neurotransmitters is going to be what's inside, in this case, the presynaptic neuron, and the site or the point at which it's going to be is the axon terminal button or axon terminal bouton. And each of these neurotransmitters, they're green, they look like little peas in there, would be, in this case, it's going to be, they're packaged in little vesicles is what we're going to call that. And so if we've got this neurotransmitter that's going to go ahead and cross the space between two of them, that's called a synapse. And in this case, what dopamine is going to do is block the process of allowing neurotransmitters to go back up and back in through the reuptake process. So it blocks reuptake so that you get just a flooding. In this case, likely it would be something like dopamine. So you'd get that pleasure or that feeling of euphoria, a high or an excitement off of taking the drug, in this case, the drug being cocaine. That's the mechanism of action. What it actually does, cocaine blocks this neurotransmitter from being reuptake. So you just get flooded with it. There's not just a little out in the synapse there. It's going to be way more, and it stays there for a fair period of time. Cocaine in particular doesn't last very long, so it's going to be a short half-life for that particular drug. But drugs, there you go. All right, let's look at drugs. First column is going to be the drug, and then let's look at what's the category or what type would we call it. And then we've got the effects, both pleasurable, so this would be like why you would be using it, and then negative, so what would be a problem for it. Apropos of this particular slide, in my household, in an activity, my wife dislocated her arm severely the other day just trying to put recycling into a garbage bin, which is super strange, and they gave her a drug called ketamine, which is dissociative. So in order to even try and get her, because me and another guy were not capable of getting her moved into a car, the pain was like a 10 out of 10. She claimed worse than childbirth for 2 kids. They had to give her that drug, so it just whacked her out of her gourd, and she didn't even know. She remembered who she was, but she kept asking, "Where am I?" as she's just sitting in like our entryway on the floor as paramedics were trying to get her into an ambulance. So like the question was, she was asking afterwards, why would you take that? Like just, she was on another planet after it. All right, I'm going to count down. What are the types? Well, there are 3, at least for the most part, that we'd be concerned with for consciousness and AP Psych. What type of drug are all of these? Okay, first one here, I would assume you're capable of getting alcohol, and a trick question that's been before in the past is alcohol is a depressant, and it does not matter. It doesn't matter how much you're taking. A little bit of alcohol functions as a depressant. A lot of bit of alcohol, if you're talking like blackout drunk, still functions as a depressant because it lowers or decreases that neural activity, neurons being able to send signals effectively from one to the next. It slows that activity. So it's always going to be a depressant. Pleasurable effects we see of it, you get a little bit of a high, and that's kind of why people probably confuse it for being a stimulant. You feel relaxed and disinhibition takes place. Problem though, if it's a depressant taken in excess or regularly, it definitely works as a depressant. It depresses. It's not something that you're going to feel active and go want to do stuff on, especially in regular abusive amounts. It stops functioning or good functioning of the REM process during sleep. So you can have memory loss. You could have acute memory loss during ingestion, and you could also forget stuff from the night before, kind of a deal. Organ damage definitely takes place, not exactly so much for the brain as was once thought, but definitely liver, cirrhosis of the liver is what's going to happen there. And then impaired reactions, which is why you definitely wouldn't want to have someone impaired or drunk driving or operating heavy machinery. They just aren't going to be able to react as fast, and clearly you'll also have issues of making good choices. Heroin. functions as a depressant, super depressant, like usually knocks your ass out kind of a depressant. In the short term, assuming you're awake, there is a euphoria, and it definitely, variations or diluted forms of it are used for pain relief. Analgesic is what we call that kind of a drug. The AP exam won't ask you to call it that, though. Just think of it as a depressant. It slows stuff down. And it, can definitely, this is one in particular, cause super bad agonizing withdrawal. Alcohol in theory could, actually, you could have a toxic case of alcohol withdrawal. So it could kill you if you were super, super, super alcoholic and you just immediately stopped allowing someone to ingest it. All right, let's do caffeine. Caffeine is definitely a stimulant, increases level of, or you're feeling that you are going to be alert, and it kind of does with the wakefulness. Really what it actually does is doesn't let you go to sleep, make you a little bit like wired in the short term, but it to some extent helps you stay up. What you can see with it, like too much of it, definitely can cause a feeling of anxiety, restlessness, insomnia if you're taking it either in too much of a dosage during the day, or if you are taking it too late in the day, if you don't have the ability to get it out of your system at the appropriate time when you're going to then try and fall asleep. And you can do withdrawal. You can have physiological withdrawal from this one, although it's a little bit strange. I get the shakes if I don't have it by, I'm recording this at 10 a.m. If I haven't had coffee by this time, usually I don't feel real great and I get headaches. Guess I'm a drug addict. Nicotine would be another example of a stimulant, a semi-legal one. Caffeine, for example, I don't think there's any age restrictions on purchase. Nicotine, we're 21 now, aren't we? You gotta be 21 to purchase nicotine products. Causes arousal, can cause relaxation. It both positively and negatively reinforces taking it. You feel good if you are used to taking it. Individuals who haven't had it before will claim they'll get headaches, or if you're talking like chewing tobacco, sometimes vomit takes place. But it stimulates is what it's actually going to be doing. Long-term use can cause heart problems, and I believe there's no known way to ingest nicotine, at least not legally in the United States, that's sold, that wouldn't be a carcinogen. You could potentially put it in some sort of liquid form that would be drank, and I don't think that would be cancerous, but I know drug companies that have tried it before would get then regulated by the FDA, so they stopped doing it. Cocaine, we just talked about, stimulant, super stimulant, rush, euphoria, confidence, energy in the short term, cardiovascular stress. If it's acute, it could be enough that you could super overdose in the short term and take a heart attack. Look a little bit itchy and weird, and there's a depressive crash once you've stopped taking it, especially if you're talking about somebody who's doing it a little now, a little in 15 to 45 minutes, a little bit in an hour, a little whenever, and going for an extended period of time on like a bender. Methamphetamines is a category of drug, not just a single one, but methamphetamines are a stimulant that will be much longer acting. If there were to ask some sort of a difference between cocaine and meth lasts longer. Euphoria, alertness, energy, again, get really weird on this. Irritable, you will not be sleeping because it lasts a very long period of time. Hypertension is going to be a heart thing, heart problems. In theory, you could, if you're dosing too highly or something's going to be wrong with however it would be made, you could talk about or potentially see seizures. So maybe don't do meth. Ecstasy, MDMA, stimulant, and to some extent it can cause hallucinations. If you're having problems keeping track of time, that time dilation, that counts as a hallucinogen. You're not doing that thing right. You're thinking it's taking forever to do this. You're thinking you're moving much faster than you are. Okay, that counts as or constitutes a hallucination. Emotional elevation, disinhibition, problems that you would see with it, and they can be severe and very problematic, would be either dehydration or particular overheating. Over the long term, depressed mood or issues with various functioning like cognitive and immune could take place. Now we're going to move on to, I'm assuming you can figure this out, these last two are going to be both hallucinogens. LSD is pure hallucination. Usually you end up seeing visual sorts of things, but you can definitely think strange things are happening. You could have a risk of panic or risk of a bad trip, and we're seeing lots of interesting things come out with this now, therapeutic research, and you'd want to make sure dosages are correct when they're doing that sort of a thing. And usually they've got someone spotting, making sure that they are cared for or curating the experience with various music or comfortable environments and stuff like that, so something isn't going to freak you out. Marijuana, or the active ingredient that would be concerned with for the College Board and the AP exam, would be THC. Okay, a milder hallucinogen, although you could definitely get it dialed up so you've got a much more potent version of it. Sensing different things. You could have pain relief. Again, that's called an analgesic, or distortions of different things. You probably aren't going to do a great job learning and remembering things when high. And the increased risk of psychological disorders, there's some debate for that. The question would be, is it going to be an issue of you've got someone who's got like addiction predisposition who also is abusing a relatively easy accessible drug, be it like marijuana, THC, cocaine, nicotine, or caffeine, alcohol, that sort of stuff? Or is it that this causes that thing, right? We don't exactly have a causal example for it, but we do see an association between the two. Hey, here's a really fun one. All right, I'm going to just pause on this one. What should we think of? Who should we think of? And what's going on here? Okay, let's go with, I'm going to type some stuff up because this is all be super important. If we're looking at a thing like this, I would hope the who part you're going to think of is going to be Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov is going to be the name. What's going on here? We see conditioning. In this case, it's going to be CC for classical conditioning. We're classically conditioning this dog to do a thing. And the thing's going to be, they put them in a big apparatus, and then we're going to invert a salivary gland so you can collect and be sciencey about how much drool is coming out, because that's the thing we're going to have happen. We're going to ding a bell. We're going to feed a dog, and the dog's going to drool. You would assume it wouldn't take very long, and he's going to pair, or she's going to pair, an association between two stimuli, a bell and food. Puts that together, drools more, and they're keeping track. This would be the original rig of it. We would not have to probably do the same quantity here. You might even be able to do some sort of more humane diode, so you wouldn't have to, you could sense moisture or the amount of drool or something like that without actually doing some sort of surgical procedure on him or her. But we would want to then keep track of how much, how quick, how well they associate those two things. And could you do a secondary reinforcer, a secondary associative thing you could pair it with? So a different noise or a light, pair the light with the bell and then take away the bell. Can they do it with drool, just the light, what have you? That sort of different stuff. Pavlov, conditioning, classical conditioning, that's essentially what we're looking at here. All right, here's how we're actually going to do some of the classical conditioning things. So we have two stimuli, two events, two things that go together, and then they will elicit the same response. So if boom is going to be something that would be frightening to a person, now we're going to put that together with lightning. So thunder and lightning, and eventually just seeing the lightning, the person anticipates that that thing should also be associated with it. The boom should be associated with it. And you're going to feel the same response. You're going to be scared. You're going to wince, or you're going to scream, or you're going to, whatever the thing might be, whatever our indicator is, you'll have the same response. Super important point here for classical conditioning, the responses are always the same. Wince, wince, or drool and drool. The responses are never going to be different if we're talking about classical conditioning stuff. And we're pairing together two things, and you substitute. So initially, a bright light probably wouldn't have made this person, or shouldn't have made this person wince or be scared, all right? But you put it with the loud noise, and then eventually just that makes this happen. All right. And all of the different parts of this, I can't remember if it's going to be on the next thing, all the different parts of this. Yeah, I'll wait and hold on the terms for it. But the terms we're going to be looking for would be unconditioned stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response, and the neutral stimulus. All right. So these would be an illustration of all five of those. I'll show you that in a slide just forthcoming. So if this one's classical conditioning, associating two stimuli together, where the big difference, or the differentiator, or the key point you're looking for to tell the difference between classical and operant conditioning is whether or not there's going to be a consequence. In operant conditioning, there's a consequence. So if we've got, take this kid here, and this is exactly what my toddler now does, the toddler's going to use the appropriate term like magic words, or we said be polite on here. If the kid says please, and then gets what he wants, what's he going to do next time he wants something? You would assume, if it's functioning correctly as a reinforcement, then they're going to do that thing more. What are they going to do more? They're going to say, please. Please get you what you want, for sure. All right? If there's a consequence there, then it's not going to be classical conditioning. One more time, it's going to be operant. Operant conditioning. If we had to talk about someone you should be thinking of for this one, Skinner. Skinner is the one you should be thinking of for operant conditioning. Okay, let's look at the parts now. If we're talking about unconditioned stimulus, conditioned stimulus, etc. Okay, before conditioning, got a dog, and I need to be able to click on the thing. Uh-oh. Oh, and I can't see what's going on. Okay, apparently I will just type it myself. Okay, we've got before conditioning, you've got the dog. The food is going to be an unconditioned stimulus. The food makes the dog drool. The dog's drool is going to be an unconditioned response. U for unconditioned, R for response. Oh, and we got this weird thing. The dog will not know what that is. It's a neutral stimulus, because the dog doesn't know to associate it with anything, the bell, or in this case, the tone or the tuning fork, whatever you want to call it, the thing there. And then during conditioning, we're going to put together these two things. We're going to put together the neutral stimulus, and we're going to put together the unconditioned stimulus. And then the dog is going to be still giving me the unconditioned response while we're learning. Okay, well, if we still have to put them together, it's still the unconditioned response because the dog's drooling for the food because of the food. If the dog has learned that they should drool at just the tone, it's already been associated now. It's a conditioned stimulus, a CS. And now, if the dog is drooling at that, we're changing the unconditioned response. We're going to call it, because it's to the tuning fork, the dog's drooling because of the tone. Now we're going to call it a conditioned response. Make sure you're clear on this. Make sure you can do this. Here's the actual a graph of this entire process for classical conditioning. What do we call it when we're putting those two things together, the bell or the tone and the food? That's going to be called an acquisition period. I've got problems here. Oh, there we go. Delete. Good. Acquisition. While they're learning to associate those two things together, acquisition. If we take away the tuning fork, we take away the bell, we take away, so all that's going to happen is the conditioned stimulus. If the tone is the only thing that's happening, now we expect that you're not going to, the strengthen of the drool, the CR, suddenly you're going to stop seeing the dog drool. Where food and bell and food and bell and food and bell, drool, 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 and then just the bell, just the tone. But if we wait a little bit, we'll see that a spontaneous recovery takes place. Wait a day, wait a week, whatever, and then do the bell again. Suddenly the dog will drool, and having no longer thought that we should separate those two, we typically see that take place. Again, if you only do the CS though, the extinction is going to happen. Yay. Hey, who's this? A world-class asshat. John B. Watson, and the thing that's going to be happening here is going to be baby Albert. And what's baby Albert doing? Baby Albert was supposed to be an illustration of generalization, because the things that we're going to be put together is John B. Watson takes baby Albert and then gives it a fluffy thing and then makes a really loud noise. So eventually fluffy things will be associated with the loud noise, and it doesn't matter what the fluffy thing is. If the organism is going to be intelligent like a baby, like a human, if the fluffy thing's a gerbil and we do it with the noise, scared of gerbils. And he'll probably still be scared of other fluffy things. Raccoons, he'll generalize. He'll do the same thing to, if it's fluffy, I'm afraid there's going to be a noise. And we saw that take place. John B. Watson. John B. Watson also gets credit for another thing. He's the first one that coins the term behaviorism, or being a behaviorist. So both Pavlov and Skinner and Watson, these are all behaviorists. They're only concerned with the things that we would be able to measure and observe. Another person, and this is going to be the guy that's largely credited for what operant conditioning turns into. The person is going to be Thorndike. And what we're seeing here is the law of effect. If there's going to be a desirable outcome, put the cat in the box, cat pushes the thing, cat gets out. You're going to do the thing, do the behavior, exhibit the behavior that caused that desirable outcome. So if you push the lever and he gets out of the box, what's he going to do next time? He's going to push the lever. It allows us to predict what's going to be happening. That way, hopefully we can reward or punish, reinforce or punish, try and make behaviors happen more or less. All right, we're about at the 20-minute mark, so my intent's going to be to try and stop there. Let me know if you need anything. Hope you guys are doing all right. We'll see you soon. Adios.